Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Platov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
I want to read to you, can you hear me? I want to read to you this little thing from Lao Tzu. We're continuing with it, and I think it is rather apropos. It's chapter 16. By attaining the heights of abstraction, we gain fullness of rest. All the 10,000 things arise, and I see them return. How they bloom in bloom, but each one homeward returneth to its root. Returning to the root means rest. It signifies the return according to destiny. Return according to destiny means the eternal. Knowing the eternal means enlightenment. Not knowing the eternal causes passions to rise. Knowing the eternal renders comprehensive. Comprehensiveness renders broad. Breadth renders royal. Royalty renders heavenly. Heaven renders reason-like. Reason renders lasting. Thus, the decay of the body implies no danger. I have a partiality, let us say, a partiality for the sky. Sky means many things to me. But in the morning, early, we look at the sky, and it begins to lighten at daybreak. And it is blue, different shades of blue during the day, and it's dark at night. And as we watch, we see clouds form and disperse. The sky remains. It's never formed and never unformed. Sometimes clouds are present and sometimes not. The sky just remains. The sky. The existence of clouds lies between birth and death. For the existence of the sky, there is no birth and there is no death. The sky is beyond time. The clouds form and disperse within time. There are those, particularly here in our Western culture, and I would say particularly here in the United States, they regard God, their personal, it is a personal God that they're referring to. That God is a creator, that everything we see is His creation. including you and me. And he is sitting out there somewhere very patiently waiting for us to realize him. He is our good friend who created us and all the things around us. Now, if you read Lao Tzu, and if you look into yourself, we find, well, Lao Tzu doesn't accept this, and I think if you look into yourself, wherein lie all answers to everything. To Lao Tzu and many others, this that is called creation is simply the activity of the eternal. Time can be because there is such a thing as a state of no time. That a mind that is no thinking mind, which is eternal, or no mind is eternal, can be filled with activity which comes and goes. And somewhere in there occurred to me, there's an old song, for all we know, we may never meet again. You know the song? For all we know, this is nothing but a dream. We come and go like ripples on a stream. If I could sing, I'd sing it for you. But it's, it was very popular at one time. We come and go like ripples on a stream. There is this activity of the rippling of the water, and then there is just water, there's rest. The activity has a beginning, and it has an end. That in which the activity takes place has no beginning and has no end. It's like, again, the clouds. They gather, and they fill the sky, and there is this, can be great turmoil, these huge, dark clouds. They're all filled with moisture. And then comes the lightning, and then comes the thunder, and then they disperse. And there is the sky. Simply has remained the sky. Hasn't moved. Didn't get wet. Wasn't burned by the lightning. Never covered its ears from the thunder, as close as it was. It just remains. It just remains. In this relative world, all things come and all things go. Only the absolute remains as it is. And so it is called the eternal. Lao Tzu called it Tao. I think if we keep that in mind, these two aspects, it might be a little easier to look at ourselves. To look at ourselves, we have to remember we are not nearly as important as we would like to think ourselves to be. When you think of all the millions of people that have come and gone, and all the millions yet who will come and go, how few really stand out. Now, we sow a seed, and an acorn, let us say, and so a tree makes an appearance. A bird dropped a pecan in my yard, which they do here and there, and forever chopping down pecan trees. And so we have this little pecan tree growing over by the other building. in a little jar. Someday somebody's going to plant it. And someday the branches will spread out and it will become a huge tree, as big as these oaks. So be careful where you put it. Flowers will come on the tree and the pecans will come. Then one day this tree falls and becomes once again one with the soil, that is, with its ground. It returns to the root. A person is born, lives his life, and then one day returns to his ground, his element. You wake up in the morning, are active all day long, are tired in the evening, and sleep claims you at night. And we return to our rest, to our ground. And in all of this activity, this coming and going during the days, what about this sky in you? A child is born, and to this child there will be, from time to time, great commotions as he matures and passes through the stages of life. Desires will hold him. He will in turn be filled with ambitions, and there will be times when living will be filled with a frenzy of activity to gain his goals. Goals always mean frenzy of activity. So just sit and be. There are anxieties and tensions, defeats and failures. Now and then, winning. Maybe his life becomes a very long, interesting story. And then everything ends. All the commotion is gone. The clouds are gone. What about the sky? We need all kinds of props, it seems like, in our daily life. We are in some ways very dependent. The sky can exist without anything. If there are clouds, the sky is present. If there are no clouds, the sky is present. Doesn't make any difference to the sky. None. The clouds, we could call them a happening, or we could call them an accident, but the cloud is dependent on many factors. But the sky isn't. If the sun rises, so water evaporates, and it rises, and clouds are formed. If there is no sun, there is no heat, and no clouds. If the sun gives too much heat, finally there's no water, and so no clouds. But the sky is acausal. It is not involved in any of that. It has not caused any of that. Whether the sun shines or not, whether the clouds form or not, whether water is or not, whether the moon is or not, whether the stars are or not, whether the earth is or not, whether man is or not, the sky forever is. Its existence is unconditional. We are the conditions. And we think we are so very important. The sky is unconditional and not affected by anything. You come into this world. Two factors, very important. One aspect is like the clouds. Without your parents, you wouldn't have a body. With your body comes the clouds. Now, if you could reach a state where you can be, without your parents, without your body, but just existing alone. That alone, which is without physical body, as in the Upanishads we read, that which is bright, bodiless, without scar of imperfection, without sinew, the self-existent EMI. Yeah. Which in India is called the Atman, or the self. And this door, the self, we must find. So each of us is cloud and sky. Like clouds which cannot exist without the sky, so desires cannot be without the self. The clouds need the sky to sail along, or whatever, but they sometimes look like they're sailing, as they go. Yeah. So desires need the self to swim around in. The self exists without desire. Is not aware of them. But desire cannot exist without the self. And just as we cannot see the sky when it is all covered with clouds, so also when the self is covered with desires, only the desires can be seen. Now, we have this strange phenomena also, that when we have desire, it leads to activity. Lots of activity, lots of commotion, lots of milling around, lots of anxiety and lots of tensions and a lot of hoop-de-doo, hoorah. So in ancient texts, and in some more modern ones, we find statements to the effect that man should reach a state of desirelessness. It is of extreme importance. Because desiring leads to greed, leads to attachment, leads to discrimination, leads to all kinds of stuff. Man should reach a state of desirelessness so that he can perceive the self. And this is a state also of desirelessness, non-desiring, of what is called non-action. Wu-wei, or wei-wu-wei, action, non-action. And this non-action is in a state of mushin, no mind. As soon as there is a desire, the activity begins, and the clouds all form, and with the forming of the clouds, there goes the perception of the sky. You know that well. Yeah. So comes a question, How do you see yourself? And I don't mean by what method, how do you see yourself? I mean, how do you perceive yourself? What kind of an image do you have of yourself? Sometimes we have an image of how we would like to be. And so we don't seem to fit into this phenomenal reality at all, because it is not a reality we're looking at. We're looking at an idea in the mind. That's how we would like to be. We would like to act this way. We would like to think this way. We would like to perform this way. And so we have a sort of an image like that, and we don't conform to it. See, we are not honest with ourselves. We do deceive ourselves with this image. So look at as to how you think you are. How you think you are. Yeah. Now also, if someone asks you who you are, what is your answer? If you're foolish enough to say, I am, you know that you're foolish. Huh? I am, in that case, would be ego self. Well, you can't say that, so maybe what I better just do in saying who I am is I'll tell them what I can do. So you immediately begin to pronounce your accomplishments. Let us say you've jogged 26 miles today, you played 9 sets of tennis, you've been given a raise, so now you make so and so much money, and you have taken such and such a course, and now you have a degree in this, that, or the other. And do you think you're describing yourself? Huh? You're describing your activities. Yeah. Of course, I wish you luck. I wish all of you would jog 26 miles a day every now and then, and that now and every now and then you would play 9 sets of tennis or 18 holes of golf or do some hours of aerobics or whatever, huh? Yeah. Now, there's nothing wrong with these activities. I'm not condemning them in any way, and I'm not just sitting here condoning them either. They're very necessary in this physical realm. And this is Caesar's world. We do this. We have bodies that need exercise, and we have... Anyway, in this world they're important. But this collection of actions, this activity that you have all day long, you know, that's not the self. And if you think it is, as you go through the day, then I will say to you, you are thinking of yourself as a cloud. And that sky has nothing to do with your activities. The sky simply is. And you do not have to do anything about it. Nor can you do anything about it. Its existence is not dependent upon you or upon anybody else. It is dependent on nothing. Therefore, it has no purpose. We are the ones that have purpose. It has no purpose. It is acausal. The sky doesn't look at the clouds as being good, because the earth needs rain. These are good clouds. Let's pat them on the back. And they're not bad, because they hide me from view. The sky doesn't discriminate. Clouds come, clouds go. Clouds, birds, planes, and who really knows what all skims through that sky, and none of it leaves a trace. So then why are we so important? What trace are you leaving? I'm not leaving any. So, non-discrimination. Sky never says good, sky never says bad. Everything is as it is. But there is in you and in me these two aspects simultaneously, in one togetherness, in one oneness. There is a world of activity and a world of non-action, non-activity, an action, non-action state. And to know both as two aspects, as one, is to know the eternal law, the Tao. Both. not do. Now, to realize yourself with this non-action, action, non-action, doesn't mean you're to do nothing, which to most people non-action means. As long as there's life, there's going to be some activity. If you do nothing, you just sit. You're sitting there now. You're just sitting. Sitting becomes an act. If you lie down in a coffin like a corpse, it becomes an act. If you leave everything and you run away to whatever goal you now are imagining, you're imagining another goal, so you leave. To wherever you yearn to go. You know, be it to a forest, be it to another marriage, be it to another career, be it to the mountain, be it to the seashore, all activity. Where then, or what then, is this wu-wei, this non-action? Some time ago, there was a young man, and he was a young monk, and he just recently moved into a monastery. And he came to his master, who told him to remember one thing, this admonition: attain the utmost in non-action. So this monk, being sincere, he did his best to follow this advice. And he spent all night thinking about it, weaving in and out of it. So the next morning he went to his teacher, and he sat like an image of the Buddha. Very silent and unmoving. And the Roshi looked at him and shook his head and said, "We have enough images of the Buddha out in the temple. We don't need any more. This won't do it all. Not at all." Attain the utmost in non-action. Now, he said to him, you're sitting and you put forth a great deal of effort in imitation of a Buddha, and so you have to strain to keep up this imitation. To keep up an imitation. This kind of effort is not non-action. You cannot attain the utmost with it. So this young monk tried every method he could read about, or he could question about, or every device he could think of for himself. But he kept on failing. None of the methods that he used led to this non-action. And after all, we do realize that the word method means an action. I mean, if you want to stop running, you just can't keep on running. If you want to die, you can't keep on living. So you're going to have action, non-action, by action, and yet the thing is action, non-action. No. Must do. Must do. And this young monk felt this deeply. He was very genuine. And he didn't know what to do. I mean, he always got the same thing: attain the utmost in non-action. So he asked the older monks. Then he asked the head monk. And finally he went back to the Roshi, and the Roshi asked him, how about your meditation? How about your progress? And he just dropped as if dead at the teacher's feet. He just dead. Non-action, see, to him. He got it all figured out now. So the Roshi looked at him and looked at him, and then very quietly said, "Open one eye." And the monk did. He opened one eye, and with his one eye open, he looked at the Roshi, and the Roshi looked at him through that one eye. What is this? Who taught you this? Who taught you to only open one eye? Huh? How come you can open only one eye? Who taught you? Yeah. Well, you know how it is when you're asked a perplexing question? The mind just sits there, doesn't it? There's not a thing in it. It just sits there. And you try to think of an answer, and the mind just sits there. You know? You know, not only that, but you know, I took these classes in Japanese, in Nihongo, huh? And sensei every now and then, because I sat right up in the front, and nobody else wanted to sit there, so I sat there. It was the only seat available when I arrived late that first day. And anyway, she was always there, and she'd point, you know, where I was supposed to be in the book, because I didn't know where they were reading. I didn't know from nothing. And they were all speaking Japanese, and I looked at all this thing, and I thought, I'll never do that. I'll never make this. But anyway, she would ask me a question, and all the words that I had learned, all of them, you know, I couldn't think of one, not one. So I'd look at her, and I'd say, all the pigeons flew the coop. And she'd say, what? You know what I meant, but I think you know what I mean. All the pigeons flew the coop. Yeah. Now what have I got? I've got an empty coop. Do I look at that? I'm looking very hard for something to fill it. Yeah. So, and this Roshi now says to this young monk, you know, truth cannot be taught. Don't you know that? Truth can't be taught. And this young monk burst into tears. And he said, I have tried everything, just everything. And he was at his wit's end. How can I know this non-action? And this teacher says to him, what do you mean, how? How gets you nowhere? How means in what manner? By what method? By what attempt? By what road? How is action? To be non-action. And you don't need action. It already is. There's no how in it. The thing that we need to do, and this is very important, and it's very simple. It doesn't acquire any action. It's just simply and you don't move. There is a shift of consciousness. You shift your focus of attention from the clouds to the sky. How simple, huh? Why do you make it so difficult? And there is no sky to be acquired. The sky is. We've never been without it. At most, all we've done is forgotten it. The sky doesn't have to be created, manufactured, or developed. That's not the effort that is required. Just shift. Just inside. Turn around. Turn around. You know, our language, and I don't know that, maybe no language is really a good one. Sanskrit comes as close to it as anything, huh? For describing the indescribable. You know, it's kind of a technical language, Sanskrit. But anyway, non-action, how do you describe it? Non-judgment, how do you describe it? Non-discrimination, how do you describe it? Non-ego, how do you describe it? Non-purpose, how do you describe it? All of which exists now. But you know, our language depends upon an activity. And that's why some teachers, like Gurdjieff with Ouspensky began writing all these books, you know, about Gurdjieff's teaching. And Gurdjieff would just shake his head and he'd say, he's ruining my teaching. He's just ruining my teaching. Putting it, you know, black and white. He objected very much. First of all, it was Madame Ouspensky that had the enlightenment, not him. But when a person is dead, we say he died, just as if he had completed an action. We were really with this action business. That's not a very good example, I know, but you know, to die, you don't have to do anything. You just stop. Finish. We know life is a life of clouds. It's a coming and a going. So our language is a language of clouds. We say to one another, and people used to say this so frequently, and I used to get so discouraged, and I was almost angry. People would come and say, I love you. And they knew no more about what love was than the pigeons that flew the coop. But they say that as if love were an act. This is their activity now. I love you. Nobody ever made love. Sex, yeah, but not love. Love isn't an act. It's a state. Your actions may be governed by love, and in so you are more thoughtful, and there is a kindness, particularly to the one to whom this may be directed. And you have then, if there is love in you, a willingness to change yourself. And love shows the quality of a person. But none of this is love itself, nor does it make love a thing. So now what about Zazen? Is your Zazen, your meditation, a form of action within yourself? If so, it's no wonder you are tired after sitting. You have been so busy chasing clouds. We have this non-action sky. And we allow clouds of anger to spread all over the mind. Or maybe the smoke of jealousy fills you, or the poison of greed spreads around. And what happened to your awareness? What happened to your awareness of a clear sky? You know, the other day we talked about this Nishidana, the power of consciousness that holds back the cloud. You know, they come and they go, and you see them coming, and you look at them, and you say, oh, look at you, are you here again? Because you know the clouds are familiar. They're the same ones that keep coming back over and over and over. You know, a little different circumstance brings it about, but it's the same damn clouds. Yeah. Anyway, Sufis have a story, and I'm going to tell you this story, and then we're going to wind it down. There was an emperor at one time, and I don't know emperor of what country. You know, and his health was not good. And so he thought he was getting along in years. And things crept into his mind. so he called in his ministers and he said, I'm getting older and I'm not well. And I see that at the end of the line, I see now there is death. Death is coming. I have not been worried about knowing things, knowing about death, knowledge of it before. But with this death approaching, I have to be concerned about it. I need something now to hold to so that I am no longer fearful. All the measures that I have taken to protect myself until now are all useless. I built huge fortresses. I have a huge, well-equipped army. I have a great many planes and ships. I have lots of protection, but they cannot save me in the long run. Find me something to give strength to my trembling mind. I hear a footstep, and I tremble like a leaf. Oh, said these ministers, wringing their hands, We can advise you about your palaces and your fortresses and your ships and your armies and your land, but in this particular connection, we know nothing. So it was decided that they would have a countrywide search to find someone who could relieve the king of his fear. Ultimately, after much searching, an old man offered to help the king. He gave him a piece of paper with a verse written on it, and he enclosed that piece of paper within a charm with which the king was to wear around his arm, like an amulet. He was told that he could open it only as a last resort, when all other efforts had failed, and he felt that he could absolutely do nothing more. Then he could see what was written on this piece of paper. So the king tied the charm on his arm, and strangely he began to feel strong. He had this tremendous sense of well-being now. Death was no longer quite so close. And there were times during the years that he felt he should open and read the verse, but suddenly a new course of action would open, and he would take that. And so this over and over and over the years passed. He kept the thing on his arm, but he never read it. And then one day, there was a big fight. The armies were fighting, and his enemy, and he was being defeated. So he had to flee for his life. The enemy at his heels. They wanted him out, And he remembered this amulet. He was quite aware of this charm he had on his arm. But then he thought, well, his horse was fleet of foot, as they say, and strong, and he thought that he had enough advantage to be able to cross the border into the next country where he would be safe. So he didn't waste any time opening this amulet, this charm, and he just sped along. Well, after a time of this frenzy of dashing away from the enemy with the enemy on his heels, as fate would have it, as it usually does, he reached the top of a mountain. And right in front of him was this deep abyss. Behind him he could hear the hoofs of the enemy horses coming closer and closer. What a dilemma. There was nothing he could do. He was doomed one way or the other if he went all over the cliff into the abyss, or if he just sat there, the enemy would catch him. So that was it. So this was the time he figured he would open the charm and read the verse. And he opened it, and he hoped, as we all do from time to time, that it contained a magic something that would wipe away all the problems. And he read it. And all it said was, "This too will pass." And he was angry. I mean, my God, he had saved this thing, and saved it, and revered it, and worshipped it, and everything else, and now this too will pass. So, but what is he going to do? There wasn't any escape. He was still sitting there on the edge of the abyss with the enemy. And then he became aware that the sound of the horse's hoofs were getting fainter and not louder. The enemy had taken a wrong turn, and they were on the wrong path. So he put the verse back in the charm and put the amulet around his arm again, and he turned back. And in future time, a couple of months down the line, his army defeated the other army. And from that time on, he read the verse over and over and over. If someone insulted him, he read it. This too shall pass. This cloud will go. He'd smile and tuck it back in the case. No one ever found him unhappy or anxious or angry. Nor did the thought of life and death trouble him anymore. This too shall pass. Lao Tzu, wrote, "Thousands of things take shape and rise in activity, but I watch them fall back to repose. Beautiful or ugly, pleasant or repulsive, form and disintegration. Disintegration being the rule of the rising. We call it creation. Born today, die tomorrow. The flower blooms, tomorrow it withers. If we can understand that this withering is only another part of blooming, withering is a part of blooming. If we can see beyond it, then we shall have developed what the Buddha called the religious eye. E-Y-E-I. Mimi. Eye. And there are several kinds of eyes. We have a physical eye. We have a heavenly eye. There is the eye of wisdom. There is the eye of Dharma. And there is the eye of Buddha. And each of these eyes perceives. That is, it has its perception on its own level. Physical eye sees the phenomenal world. The eye of Dharma sees the Dharma world. The eye of Buddha sees the Buddha world. You cannot, in no way is it possible that you see the Buddha world with a physical eye. Each eye has its realm. You're sitting for meditation, your zazen is to unfold, allowing these eyes to unfold. How are you going to see without an eye? You remember the little thing that says, "I joy an eye of mind." In this world, everything is undecided. Nothing is decided. Everything is undecided. Everything is prone to decay. Nothing remains. That which has a beginning has an end. And he who sees this and sees a state, perceives a state of non-action, attains the eye of wisdom. So, if you must have reason for sitting, there are reasons for sitting, aren't there? And I think, what time does your party start, Bill? Whenever.
You had told people 1 o'clock.
Well, somebody told me that.
Oh, sounds good to me.
sounds good to you. And I would like very much if you would read this little squip in the rather long squip for me about this I in this thing. This little, I give you something, you know not what, enrich it. I've been talking about it all week. Enrich it. You know not how. Bring it back. You know not when. Remember, I shall be watching you. And the infant, this is at the birth of an infant, and the infant smiled to herself, content not to understand until the time should ripen. Then through the years our princess saw that it was not the advent of the prince nor the ship coming home. She had to learn that happiness is not pleasure, rather a virtue come to by grace and discipline, and not without suffering. It requires a poignant letting go and the learning of a new vocabulary. And so the years ripened her, and the realization came one day that she had not been singled out, given something solely on her own, and her uniqueness fell from her like a garment, leaving her with a sense of loss and then a feeling of freedom. Whatever it was, all men received it. She was not alone. She knew now what she had to do, what they all would have to do, to climb up through the length of herself, repairing what had been wrong, roads taken, the forgettings, the long stretches of nothingness, and preparing what was to come. Only thus could she enrich the gift she had to bring back. Thusly she began the inward journey back through the thrice 9 lands to the beginning, which was the end.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.